This happened not even a month ago. I'm a senior in high school, and I've lived in Nevada my whole life. There's not a whole lot to do here, but one thing my friends and I have always been into is urban exploring. We look for abandoned buildings, old service tunnels, dead malls, anything that felt forgotten. We climb through broken fences, take pictures, sometimes sneak up to the roofs or down into basements. It wasn't about breaking stuff or doing anything illegal. It was just about the vibe. The only guy in our group who always found the weirdest places was Charles. He was kind of the quiet, mysterious type. He'd show up with locations none of us had heard of. Half the time, I didn't even ask how he found them. One day, he sent us a screenshot from some sketchy Instagram account. A low-follower account, blurry photos, all kinds of creepy comments on the posts. The caption on the post in question said something like, "Dozens of abandoned mine shafts in the Mojave Desert if you know where to look." According to Charles, he had been in contact with the account, and whoever was running it had given him some areas to check out. That's all Charles needed. He was instantly obsessed with the idea. So that Saturday, it was me, Charles, and our other friend James. I had a Wrangler that was perfect for off-road desert driving, so we took that. We didn't have a specific address or anything, just the general area of a pin drop somewhere in the middle of the The spot Charles had marked was way off in the desert, like really far from anything. We turned off the main road almost half an hour earlier, and the dirt path we were on barely looked like a road anymore. We drove around for what felt like forever. No signs, no structures, no landmarks, just endless nothing. I kept checking my phone, even though I knew we didn't have service. James was in the back, getting more and more irritated. He started telling Charles this whole thing was a waste of time, and that he had been scammed by some troll account. Charles insisted that we keep looking, so we did. He's always been stubborn with navigation, so I figured I'd indulge him a little while longer. Eventually, just as we were about to call it quits, James pointed out something off to the right. At first, it looked like just more rock and sand, but as we got closer, we saw it. This half-collapsed wooden structure built into the side of a slope. Part of the entrance looked like it had been caved in, but you could still see a dark hole behind the support beams. It wasn't huge, but it was definitely man-made, definitely a mine shaft. Charles didn't say anything at first. He just pulled out his phone, opened the offline map he'd downloaded when we still had service, and dropped a pin on it. Then he turned to James and said, "Told you," to which James said he just got lucky. But even I had to admit, it was kind of crazy. We'd been driving in circles out in the middle of nowhere, and somehow, we'd actually found one. I parked a few yards from the entrance, just off to the side on a flat patch of dirt. We all climbed out and geared up. Charles had even brought masks for us to wear. The three of us walked up the mine, and it looked even sketchier up close. Charles picked up a rock and tossed it in. We waited. A few seconds later, we heard it clang 3 times, then nothing. It was really deep. Charles looked back at us and said if we tripped on the way down, we were probably dead. We started the descent. Luckily, the shaft wasn't a straight drop. It sloped down at a steep angle, but not enough that we had to climb hand over hand. The ground was loose and uneven, and there were old wooden beams lining parts of the wall. Surprisingly, they seemed pretty sturdy. The deeper we went, the colder it got, and quieter. It was really eerie down there. We couldn't even see any light coming through from the entrance anymore. Eventually, we made it to what felt like the bottom. The shaft leveled out and opened into a wider tunnel that branched off in a few directions. It looked exactly how you'd imagine. Old support beams every few yards, rusted rails half buried in dirt, and a thick layer of dust on everything. There were scraps of wood and metal scattered around, maybe parts of old carts or tools. It smelled kind of stale in there, if that made any sense. Honestly, I didn't realize how much of a blessing the masks were until that point. We picked a tunnel and just started walking. None of us really said much. We weren't looking for anything specific, just exploring. There honestly wasn't much cool stuff down there. The place looked like it had been mostly cleaned out of anything worth taking. But then we heard something. It was faint, somewhere further down the tunnel. It sounded like something being dragged. At first, I thought I imagined it, but I looked over and saw Charles had stopped too. James motioned for us to turn off our flashlights, so we did. We just stood there in total darkness, listening. The sound came again. It was a sort of scraping sound, like metal or maybe even wood being dragged along the ground. It was hard to tell with the echo, but it seemed like whatever it was getting closer. We stood there in the dark for maybe 30 seconds, maybe a full minute. It was hard to tell. The scraping sound kept coming, slowly getting louder. It didn't sound too close to us, but that didn't make it any less terrifying. Then, James accidentally flicked his flashlight on and then off again. I wanted to kill him. The scraping stopped and everything went silent. Then, out of nowhere, there was this loud metallic clang from somewhere deep in the tunnel. Like whatever was being dragged had just been dropped. And right after that came the most awful, demonic scream I'd ever heard. It barely sounded human. We turned and ran, not even caring about how loud we were being. I'd never run faster in my entire life. I could hear footsteps coming from somewhere behind me, and I thought I was going to have a panic attack. I was in the back trying to keep up, and then I tripped on something. One of my shoes came off, and I struggled to stay upright. I didn't have time to go back for it, so I just kept going, trying to ignore the pain in my foot. Up ahead, Charles and James had already reached the incline and were climbing. I practically threw myself up the stairs. When I tell you climbing those stairs half barefoot was the most painful thing I'd ever experienced, I'm not exaggerating. It was excruciating. I picked up a new splinter every few seconds. If not for the adrenaline coursing through my veins, I don't think I would have been able to make it out of there. By the time I finally made it out into the open air, my foot was shot. I needed James and Charles to damn near carry me over to the car. I couldn't drive like that, so James jumped in the driver's seat. I barely got the door closed before he threw it in gear and floored it. I don't think we were followed up the shaft, but we weren't sticking around to find out. We drove in silence all the way to the nearest hospital. I thought the pain was going to make me pass out. I ended up having to get a tetanus shot, and even after all my wounds were cleaned and all the splinters were removed, I couldn't walk normally for days. A few days later, once I could walk without limping too bad, James told us he'd dropped his wallet somewhere near the shaft, probably when he was helping me get to the car. He hadn't said anything at the time, but now he figured it was worth going back. Just to the entrance, no way were we going back inside. So the three of us drove back out there using the pin that Charles had saved. Obviously, James's wallet was nowhere in sight, but we did find something. My shoe. It was sitting a few feet from the mine's entrance. I cautiously walked over to it and picked it up. It was torn up, like someone, or dare I say something, had bitten into it. There were literally teeth marks in my shoe, and entire chunks of it were missing. We didn't stick around much longer after that. None of us can come up with any rational explanation. You might be quick to just say it was some homeless person living down there, but if that were the case, how the hell had they managed to stay alive for so long? There's no food down there. What in the world would they eat? Charles said that Instagram account never responded to him when he DM'd him about what happened. It's going to be a long time before I do any urban exploring in the desert again.